I went to the Oklahoma Real Estate Commission meeting, so you don't have to. And here is your recap of the March 2023 Oklahoma Real Estate Commission meeting. So let's get started. The Real Estate Commission had a lengthy agenda that will make your head spin if you spend any time with it, but I'm going to give you the recap. The first piece on almost every Real Estate Commission meeting is the applicant appeals. And this means if somebody was denied an application for a license, they get a chance to come in and ask the commission to change their mind. The reality is it's not going to happen. In almost every case that I've seen recently, the commission is very unlikely to give somebody a change of heart when it comes to denying their application. And in almost every single case, it's because of a criminal history. And that held true during this meeting as well. Now, I'm going to give you a tip. If you know somebody who wants to get their license and they do have a criminal history that may stop that from happening, they need to figure out how they can get that criminal history expunged. That is the quickest way to get you back on track so you can get a license if you do have a criminal history, is to go and get an expungement. It's so much that even a pardon by the governor isn't going to be enough. So go get that expungement if you're in that situation. The second item is a little unusual. At the last meeting, the commission took adverse action against somebody, and they came back this meeting and asked for a motion to reconsider. They were essentially asking the commission to undo that final order and take a second look at it. The commission, though, as expected, denied this motion to reconsider, and that case is final. They're going to have to go to district court to appeal that one. Something the commission does a lot more now that I really like to see is settling cases through consent orders. What's a consent order? Well, it's a way to just settle the case without having to go to a hearing, and you can resolve cases a little bit quicker, especially where if we know the violation occurred, then we can actually work with the commission staff. We can resolve these things and agree to a settlement, and we can just move this thing on down the road without having to do a full hearing and go through that whole process. The other benefit, if you do a consent order, is you get to have control of the outcome a little bit more. You've got to work with the commission, and they're not going to give you everything, but at least at the end of the day, if you enter into an agreement with them, then you know what the deal is. If you go forward to a hearing, you just never know. The situation could be a whole lot worse than if you just worked it out with the commission. But let's get a few highlights of some of the things that happened at this meeting that you might want to be aware of. One bigger case involved a broker that didn't timely appoint a new branch broker at a branch office for a period of 3 months. There was some mishap there, and so you had a branch office that didn't have a branch broker for an extended period of time. There was also some issue with some licensees under the brokerage that didn't have a license that had lapsed, and because of that, commissions were paid out to unlicensed people with lapsed licenses. And in this case, the penalty was pretty stiff, and although it was agreed to, this is a pretty harsh penalty. It was a $15,000 fine, plus the broker is going to go down to a sales associate for at least 12 months, and at the end of that 12 months can reapply. The issue here is having a branch office and having licensees that don't have a license and don't have a branch office broker in them. The commission's going to consider that a really serious issue, so you need to make sure you get those administrative tasks handled right. Another major issue on the Real Estate Commission's agenda are these beneficial interest issues. And in this case, we had a situation where a broker had a beneficial interest in a title company, and that title company was doing work on a transaction. What happened here, though, is that didn't get disclosed to all the parties in writing in the transaction. And again, this is a major issue for the Real Estate Commission recently. I've heard them talk about this before, these beneficial interest issues. And in this case, it was a $5,000 fine. It's pretty significant. So you got to make sure that if you do have a beneficial interest or the broker has a beneficial interest in some sort of entity that's providing services, in this case, a part owner in a title company, something along those lines, you got to make sure that's disclosed to all the parties in the transaction in writing. Otherwise, you might find yourself in front of the Real Estate Commission. If you've been in the industry for longer than 5 minutes, then you've heard somebody say, disclose, disclose, disclose. And that is true for the last case we talked about, as well as this one where there was a $7,500 fine that involved an agent that failed to disclose a family relationship in a transaction, failed to disclose in writing an interest that that agent had in the property, as well as failing to disclose known material defects in the property with that property disclosure. So you got to make sure all those various disclosures, there's a whole bunch of them, So you got to make sure you get those done correctly and in the right way at the right time. Listen, if you find these kinds of videos helpful, I certainly appreciate you watching. Do me a quick favor, hit like down below and please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's going to help us reach other real estate professionals in the area who can benefit from this. Thank you so much. Another major issue that we see come up pretty frequently is unlicensed activity and people doing certain licensed activity outside of their brokerage. In this case, we had some situations where there was somebody doing property management outside of their brokerage. We also had some unlicensed activity that was going on, both marketing for selling as well as unlicensed property management. Got to make sure all that runs through a brokerage, and especially those property management issues, it's got to go through the brokerage. You can't go and open a separate trust account and do property management outside of the brokerage where you hang your license. It's all got to be done. And if you don't do it, it can really cost you. And the last thing that I want to touch on is team registrations. If you're operating as a team, make sure that you are registered with the commission. It's $100 to register it. And if you don't, it could cost you hundreds more if they find out that you're operating and marketing yourself as a team and not registered. So get that registered. I want to give you 3 highlights from the executive director's report to know of a few things that are going on the back end of the real estate commission. The first one is they're going to have a newsletter coming out here pretty soon. So be on the lookout for that in your email inbox. Those are usually pretty helpful and you can learn a lot from them. So don't just hit that into your spam folder or delete before you open it. Definitely give it a look when that comes through. The next one is the Real Estate Commission is working on a mobile app that actually looks pretty cool. It'll give you tools to be able to manage your license, manage your brokerage, all kinds of cool stuff, as well as a bunch of resources they have available in a mobile app form. It actually looks pretty cool, and I'm kind of excited to see how that shakes out. Now, the last one is there's been some word going around. I've seen it on Facebook. There's an app out there that lets you pay another agent to do a showing for you. So for example, maybe you've got a conflict and this other agent can be there, but you're not affiliated with the same brokerage and it all runs through an app. Listen, they've said that this is not permitted because any payment that goes back and forth between agents has to be done through the brokers. So you can't, as a real estate associate, pay another associate to do a showing for you. Otherwise, that could be paying a commission or consideration for licensable activities to somebody outside of the brokerage. The only way to do that legally is if it really goes from broker to broker. So you need to be careful about that. The Real Estate Commission said they're actually going to contact the makers of that app and tell them it's not permitted in the state of Oklahoma. So be careful with that. They did say they're not going to go after any of the agents that have used it. That's not their goal. They just want to make sure people are in compliance. So if you've been using that, I would suggest you start looking at alternatives if you need somebody to cover a showing for you. So be careful with that. They've also got some rule changes on the administrative rule side that they are working on, and that has been proposed and will be moving forward now. There's nothing too crazy in there, but there's a few things. One of which is if you have a team name, it has to have team or group within the name, and they are going to ask people to start voluntarily getting into compliance with that. But be aware that if you're going to register a team name, go ahead and make sure team or group is in that name when you register it. Another issue they're looking at is the registration of addresses. You can log in on the OREC portal to update your home address. Evidently, there's a lot of people that have moved and have failed to do that. So just be aware that that's something they do look at. So make sure if you've moved in the last few years and you haven't updated that address with the Real Estate Commission, go ahead and jump in there and do that and get that taken care of. The last thing is they are actually adding a few things to clean up some of these beneficial interests and family interest relationship disclosures that we talked about earlier, making sure it's clear what has to be disclosed, as well as cleaning up that family disclosure where right now it only has to be done verbally, but do it in writing anyway, but they're going to make it where it has to be done in writing, which just do it anyway. And the last piece I want you to be aware of is how many licensees are there in the state of Oklahoma? Can you guess? It's 18,406 active licenses in the state of Oklahoma. Now that includes, I believe, the brokerages that are licensed as well as the individual licensees, but it's a whole lot. And it's still, I think, at an all-time high. If not, it's real close to it. Whole lot of licensees out there, and that's going to keep growing. Maybe, we'll see. Maybe it'll go down. I don't know. Hey, I hope that OREC update was helpful for you. There's always a lot to learn from those, and I'm going to keep going and bringing you these updates. So if you don't want to go, that's all right. I'll be there for you, and I will make sure you get the recap. Listen, our Pro Academy, we've got some live classes that are coming up. We're going to host our own class here pretty soon. We've got the location booked. We've got the content is being developed. It's going to be a special class that you can't get anywhere else. And if you're interested in that, you need to go to our website, rpro.academy, sign up for our email newsletter. If you sign up for our email list, you will be in the first round that gets notice of when registration is available for that in-person class, and seating is limited. We're not going to going to have more than like 50 people. So if you want to be on that list, and I hope you do, please go sign up for our email list and you'll be in the first round of people to get notice so that you can be on top of that registration ready to go. We'd love to have you there. Thanks again for joining us right here on the R Pro Show.